The Miller family thought they had it. They'd saved for 6 years. They lived in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment, skipped every vacation, and drove cars with over 150,000 miles just to hit that 20% down payment goal. They had their pre-approval letter, their credit was spotless, and they even wrote a handwritten note to the owners about how much they loved the oak tree in the backyard. They offered $10,000 over the asking price. In any other decade, they were the perfect buyers. But the phone call they got wasn't a celebration. Their realtor's voice was flat, almost robotic. "We lost it," she said. An all-cash offer came in, $60,000 over asking. No inspection, no contingencies. They closed the deal in 7 days. The Millers weren't outbid by another family. They were outbid by an algorithm sitting in a server room in Manhattan. Most people will tell you that housing is expensive because of supply and demand. They'll tell you we just aren't building enough houses, or that interest rates are the culprit. That's the lie they want you to believe, because it sounds like a natural disaster, something nobody can control. But here's where it gets worse. While you're watching the Federal Reserve meetings and checking Zillow, a new breed of predator has quietly moved into your neighborhood. They aren't buying houses to live in them. They are stripping the American dream for parts. They are turning the very idea of home into a subscription service, a product as a service, where you pay forever and own nothing. We are witnessing the largest transfer of residential wealth in human history. It is a calculated, systemic heist. If you feel like the ladder of homeownership is being pulled up just as you reach for the first rung, it's because it is. But to understand how they're doing it and why your neighborhood is their next target, we have to look at the one thing these billion-dollar firms spend millions of dollars to keep hidden. We have to look at the incentive machine. To understand why this is happening, you have to understand the spread. Think of the housing market like a giant game of musical chairs. In a normal world, there are 100 chairs and 100 families. Occasionally, a family moves and a new one sits down. But imagine if a guy walked into the room with $1 billion and bought 20 of those chairs. He doesn't want to sit in them. He just wants to charge you a fee every time you need to sit down. Why would he do this? Because of a specific financial glitch created after 2008. When you go to buy a house, you go to a local bank. You provide pay stubs, tax returns, and blood samples. You are a high-friction borrower. But a private equity firm? They have something called a covenant subscription facility. This is the part nobody tells you. They don't wait for a mortgage. They have a direct line to billions of dollars in dark pool liquidity. While you are waiting for an appraiser to check if the roof is leaking, the firm's algorithm has already analyzed 5,000 data points: school ratings, proximity to a Starbucks, local job growth, and even the social sentiment of the zip code. Within 15 seconds of a house hitting the MLS, the algorithm has flagged it. It knows that if it buys this house for $350,000, it can rent it for $2,800 a month. It knows that in that specific zip code, the supply of starter homes is shrinking. It's not buying a house, it's buying a predictable, inflation-protected cash flow. But here is where the incentive machine turns toxic. A normal family buys a house to build equity. They fix the fence because they live there. A private equity firm buys a house to optimize it. In their world, a broken fence is just a line item on a spreadsheet. If they can delay fixing it for 6 months, their quarterly yield goes up by 0.2%. Multiply that by 80,000 houses, and you're talking about millions of dollars in found profit. They aren't just your landlord, they are your competitor. Every time they buy a house in a neighborhood, they drive up the comps for every other house. This makes it harder for you to buy, which forces you to rent. And who do you rent from? The same people who made it impossible for you to buy. It's a perfect closed-loop system where you are the fuel. Let's look at a real-world example of how this trap snaps shut. Let's look at the rise of a company like Invitation Homes. In the wake of the 2008 housing crash, millions of Americans were being evicted. The streets were littered with foreclosure signs. To most people, this was a tragedy. To Wall Street, it was a generational buying opportunity. Invitation Homes, backed by the private equity giant Blackstone, began buying houses at a rate of $150 million worth of property every single week. They weren't looking for mansions. They were looking for the starter home, the 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom house that used to be the entry point for the middle class. They didn't just buy the houses, they verticalized the entire process. They built their own maintenance companies, their own leasing software, and their own eviction pipelines. One resident in Atlanta, let's call her Sarah, experienced the optimization firsthand. Sarah's rent was increased by 15% every single year. When her HVAC system died in the middle of a Georgia summer, it took 3 weeks to get a response. Why? Because the maintenance request was being filtered through an algorithm designed to minimize CapEx, capital expenditures. The algorithm decided that it was cheaper to lose Sarah as a tenant and find a new one at a higher market rate than it was to fix the AC unit immediately. This is the income illusion.
We think we are paying for a service, but we are actually just feeding a debt yield requirement. Sarah eventually had to leave, but when she looked for a new place to rent, she realized that almost every house in her price range was owned by the same 3 parent companies. She had nowhere to go. The neighborhood hadn't changed, but the ownership had. The local wealth that used to stay in Atlanta, the mortgage interest that used to go to local banks, and the equity that used to stay with local families was now being siphoned off and sent to a high-rise in New York. If you're starting to realize the system is rigged, you're not alone. We're going deeper into how this destroys the entire US economy. If this investigation is opening your eyes, hit the subscribe button. We don't have corporate sponsors telling us what to say. We only have you. Now, let's talk about the macro ripple effect. This isn't just about Sarah or the Millers. This is about the fundamental structure of the US economy. For 70 years, the middle class was built on one thing: forced savings via a mortgage. When you pay a mortgage, a portion of that money stays in your pocket in the form of home equity. It's a wealth-building machine. But when you pay rent to a private equity firm, 100% of that money is consumed. It's gone. This creates a massive wealth gap that no amount of salary increases can fix. While wages are growing at 3 or 4%, the asset class, the houses owned by Wall Street, is growing at 10 or 20%. This is the part that should scare you. This system actually benefits from inflation. When the price of eggs goes up, the value of the firm's houses goes up, and the rent they can charge goes up. They are shorting the dollar while longing the roof over your head. But it gets even more cynical. Many of these firms are funded by pension funds. That means your own retirement money might be being used to outbid you on a house today so that the firm can pay you a pension 30 years from now. They are using your own future to steal your present. The US government has noticed, but here's the problem. The incentive machine includes the politicians. These firms are some of the largest lobbyists in Washington. They argue that they are providing professionalized rental options. They call themselves market stabilizers. But ask yourself, does a market feel stable when a 25-year-old with a good job can't find a house within 50 miles of their workplace? Or does it feel like a slow-motion collapse? This is the part where I tell you there is an easy fix. But there isn't. This isn't a glitch in the system. It is the system. We have moved from an ownership economy to an access economy. You have access to a house as long as you can afford the monthly subscription. The moment you can't, the algorithm triggers an automated eviction notice. The American dream was based on the idea that you could eventually finish paying for your life. You pay off the house, you pay off the car, and retire with security. But in the permanent renter model, you are never finished. You are a perpetual revenue stream for a corporation that will exist long after you are. If you want to protect yourself, you have to stop playing their game. You have to look for the unalgorithmical. The big firms want modular housing. They want 3-bedroom, 2-bath suburbs that look exactly the same because they are easy to value and easy to manage at scale. If you are looking to buy, look for the weird properties. Look for the houses that require a human eye to see the value. Look for the locations that haven't been flagged by the big data pools yet. But more importantly, we have to change the way we talk about housing. As long as we treat a home as a speculative asset for Wall Street, rather than a foundation for a stable society, the trap will only get tighter. We are reaching a breaking point. In some cities, over 40% of all single-family homes sold last year went to investors, not families. So I have to ask you, at what point does a country stop being a country and start being a managed portfolio? When the majority of the population no longer has a stake in the land they live on, what happens to the social contract? Do you think the American dream can survive if it's owned by a landlord you can never speak to? Let me know in the comments if you've been outbid by a corporate buyer. We need to hear the stories the data tries to hide, because the first step to escaping a trap is realizing you're already in one.
Thank you for spending time with us here at the Violet Vault. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay focused and keep growing.